The Maker Signal with Benjamin Lyles.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Maker Signal. I'm Benjamin Lyles, and today I want to talk about pop music. Not really in the celebrity news sense, not in the who's number one on the charts this week sense. I'm talking about pop music as a form of creativity. Why does it work? Why do some songs get stuck in your head almost immediately? Why can you hear 3 seconds of something and know exactly what it is? And why is writing something simple and memorable sometimes way harder than writing something complicated? Because I think pop music teaches creators something really important. Simple does not mean easy, and it definitely does not mean shallow. Think about songs you've known for years. A lot of the time, you don't remember every lyric. You don't even remember every chord. You may not even remember the whole verse, but you remember the hook. You remember the chorus. You remember that one line. Sometimes one sound. Sometimes literally a few notes. And sometimes that's enough. That fascinates me because there is a lot of skill involved in creating something people can remember that quickly. That means somebody had to make choices. A lot of choices. What stays? What goes? What repeats? What is too much? What is not enough? And sometimes the strongest thing you can do creatively is remove something. Creators love adding things. I know I do. Another line, another harmony, another layer, another feature, another paragraph, another idea. Because adding something feels like progress. But eventually you reach a point where more does not make something better. It just makes it busier. Pop music is really good at teaching restraint. A good pop song usually knows what it is. It has a center. There's a feeling. There's a hook. There's some kind of emotional direction. And then everything supports that. That's hard. Because you have to decide what the song is really about. When people say hook, they usually think catchy. And yes, a hook should probably be catchy. That's kind of the job. But a good hook is more than that. A hook is the thing the song wants you to carry away with you. It might be a lyric, it might be a melody, it might be rhythm, it might be one phrase that explains the entire emotional idea. And that is powerful because sometimes you can say more with 5 good words than with 50 average ones. That applies way beyond music too. Writing, video, podcasting, programming, design. You have to know what the thing is actually trying to do. Now this is where I think people sometimes get unfair with pop music. They'll hear something simple and say, well, that's easy. Maybe. Sometimes. There are absolutely lazy songs. Let's not pretend otherwise. But simplicity and laziness are not the same thing. A lazy song is underdeveloped. A simple song is focused. That is a big difference. A really good pop chorus can sound like the most obvious thing in the world after somebody writes it. That is actually one of the strange things about great creative work. Once it exists, it feels inevitable. You hear it and think, of course, that's the line. Of course, that's the melody. Okay, then write one. That's where it gets interesting. Some of the best things sound easy because the work is hidden. That's true in music. It's true in writing. It's true in software. It's true in almost anything that creative. If something is clean and intuitive, people often do not see all the decisions behind it. And pop music can be like that. A song might only be 3 minutes long. The chorus might be 8 lines. But getting those 8 lines right might take 20 versions. Or 50. You can spend an hour changing one word, and somebody listening will never know. They'll just hear the final version. That's kind of the point. Another thing pop music understands really well is repetition. Creators sometimes get scared of repeating themselves. We think, I already said that. Yeah, but did the audience remember it? There is a difference. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates memory. That's why choruses repeat. That's why hooks repeat. That's why themes repeat. And when repetition is done well, it does not feel boring. It feels satisfying. That's the trick. You want someone to know what is coming and still want it to come. That is really hard to do. That is one of my favorite things about pop structure. You can feel something coming, the verse builds, the pre-chorus lifts, the tension changes, and your brain is waiting for the chorus. Then it arrives, and if the song is working, that arrival feels good. It's like dopamine to the brain. That is structure doing emotional work. It is not just verse, pre-chorus, chorus, because that is what everybody does. The structure is guiding attention. It is preparing the listener. And honestly, that is useful for any kind of communication. You need setup. You need payoff. You need contrast. Pop music also teaches something we probably do not always love hearing. Attention is limited. People decide quickly. They hear something and immediately start forming an opinion. That does not mean you have to become desperate for attention. I do not like creating that way. But you do need to respect the audience's time. If your idea takes 5 minutes to become interesting, you may want to ask why. It applies to a video. It applies to a podcast. It applies to a book. You do not have to reveal everything immediately, but give people a reason to stay. Another thing good pop music tends to do well is emotional clarity. You usually know what the song feels like: happy, heartbroken, confident, angry, flirty, lonely, hopeful, defiant. Even when the lyrics are more complicated, the emotional direction is usually clear. I think creators can learn a lot from that. Sometimes we make something confusing because we are trying to make it deep. But confusion is not depth. But that is worth remembering. Something that can be simple and still have layers. You just need a clear doorway into it. At the end of the day, pop music is designed to connect. That is probably the biggest lesson. You want somebody to hear it, feel it, remember it, maybe sing it, maybe play it again, and I love that, because creativity is not only about self-expression, at least not for me. I want the thing I make to reach somebody. That's kind of like Morgan Wallen's "I want somebody to love me," or something like that. I want the thing I make to reach somebody. There is an audience on the other side. And that changes the way you think. Not in a cynical way. Not what will make people click. But how do I communicate this clearly enough that somebody can actually receive it? That's different. When I write a song, I can have a lot of ideas. Lines I like, sounds I like, different directions. But eventually I have to ask, what is the song? What is the thing somebody should remember? If I cannot answer that, I probably do not know the song yet. And that can be uncomfortable because sometimes you like a lot of individual pieces, but they do not belong in the same thing. You have to choose. That is creation. And honestly, I think this is why pop music interests me beyond just music. The lesson carries over. If you are writing a book, what is the core idea? If you are programming something, what problem are you actually solving? If you are making a video, what do you want the viewer to remember? If you are doing a podcast, what is the one thing this episode is about? That sounds obvious, but creators drift. We start adding. We chase side ideas. We forget the center. Pop music reminds you to come back to the hook. And I do think there is a faith angle in this. Not because every pop song has to become a worship song. That is not what I mean. I mean clarity matters. Purpose matters. If I believe what I make has value, then I should care about communicating well. I should care about whether people can receive it. There is no virtue in making something harder to understand than it needs to be. Sometimes simple is generous. Sometimes clarity is an act of service. That is something I think about. This is probably This is probably the big thing I want to leave you with. When something looks simple, do not assume nothing went into it. Sometimes simplicity is the result of a lot of discipline, a lot of editing, a lot of taste, a lot of restraint. You do not get there by doing less work. Sometimes you get there by doing more work and then hiding the work. That is craft. So here is something I want you to think about. What is a song you can recognize almost instantly? Maybe from the opening beat, the first chord, the vocal sound, a melody, and then ask yourself, why? What made it stick? Was it repetition? Was it emotion? Was it simplicity? Was it the rhythm? Was it the hook? There is something interesting in that answer. And if you are a creator, there is probably something you can steal from it. Not copy, learn from. Big difference. I think pop music works because it respects memory, it respects emotion, it respects structure, and when it is done well, it makes something complicated feel simple. That is not easy. That is craft. So whether you write songs, books, software, videos, or anything else, maybe ask yourself, what is the hook? What is the setter? What can I remove? What do I actually want somebody to remember? Because sometimes the strongest thing you can make is not the most complicated thing. It is the clearest thing. I'm Benjamin Lyles. This is the Maker Signal. Faith, creativity, technology. Making what matters. Thanks for spending some time with me, and I'll see you in the next one.